Okay, welcome back to On the Ball, the video podcast series from the Vanderbilt Sports and Society Initiative. I'm Andrew Maraniss, and our guest today is Joe Kennedy from the team. Joe, I'm really excited to have this chance to talk to you about a great effort that you're involved with to foster civic engagement among student athletes, something that really is close to my heart. Before we start our interview, though, for people are familiar with the Kennedy name in basketball. Your dad, Pat Kennedy, the longtime coach at schools like Florida State and DePaul, I know, among others. Those are the two that come first to mind for me. I know you played college basketball at Northwestern. You worked in the Obama White House. You've been involved in coaching at the collegiate and NBA level, and now you're involved with the team. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Andrew. It's great to connect, and I am always appreciative of your support. So thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So growing up in a basketball family, I mean, I know that can be tough for a family. It often involves a lot of moving, a lot of public scrutiny on your father, from fans. What was it like for you? But also like cool opportunities, I'm sure, to be the guy hanging around as a little kid among these tall basketball players. So what was that like for you?
Yeah, it's so much about it was really just so memorable and fantastic as a kid when you're growing up in this environment, going to practice and traveling to games. And I was very fortunate. We moved when my dad was head coach at Iona after he had followed Jimmy V, and he had some success at Iona. He got the Florida State job. And I moved there when I was 3, and Root was there for 11 years and really grew up kind of in Tallahassee, where everything revolves around the Seminoles, and was fortunate. He had a great run there, and so you're around these guys that end up going to play in the NBA, like Charlie Ward and Sam Cassell and Bob Sura. And you don't kind of realize at the time the moment that you're a part of. It's definitely got its stressors. I have an unbelievable level of empathy for people that have to go through that today with social media.
Right.
I didn't have that worry. We could just turn off talk radio and not get the newspaper. But
Yeah.
it's if you're doing well, it's people are loving it and supporting the team. And obviously, there's moments where you got your critics out there. So I think you learn as a kid to be a little thick-skinned in certain areas. But all in all, it was such a awesome experience to grow up with these guys and just kind of be cheering them on from behind the bench.
All right. And then you played at Northwestern for Bill Carmody, is that right? What was that college student athlete experience like for you? And are there things that you took away from that experience and having to balance your sports and your academics and the rest of your life that are, helpful in your job now?
Yeah, so we ended up moving up to Chicago when my dad got the DePaul job, and like you mentioned earlier, when you're part of a coach's family, you got to move. It's part of the gig. But I was really sad to leave Tallahassee, but loved Chicago. So we got there. I spent my high school years there. I went to Loyola Academy, which was right down the road from Northwestern. And
Okay.
so when I got there, I kind of learned more about Northwestern. And Coach Carmody had just gotten the job. He'd come from Princeton, where he'd had a tremendous amount of success. Him and my dad were actually high school rivals growing up on the Jersey Shore. And it then just kind of became my dream. I really wanted to play basketball at Northwestern. It was a great school, it was right down the road. And it always had this dream as a kid to play college basketball. And so I was, just so grateful to get that opportunity to go to school there and to play and to kind of have that dream come true. And then when you're there, you're just trying to figure out how to balance it all because it's a
Yeah.
lot on student athletes, regardless of what school they're at. You're balancing your responsibilities as an athlete, and you want to become the best player you can be. You're balancing your responsibilities as a student, and wanting to make sure you're doing everything you need to do there, right? And at a place like Northwestern as well, you're trying to take advantage of all of these kind of opportunities that are in front of you when you're at a terrific university like that. I loved it. We had a great time. The relationships, I think back about it's the relationships of who you play with. Kind of who were some of the other student athletes in the department at the time, who coached you, like the staff that coached me there. I'm still really close with all of them to this
Okay.
day. They are mentors of mine. Guys I played with were in my wedding. I've been in their weddings, and I think you hear that story from other athletes, just kind of that impact of, you go through that journey of being on a team together, and what that means, and then it really stays with you for, I think, a long time after the ball stops bouncing. And that was true for me. So I really loved it. And Northwestern, just in my own personal life, was able to open up so many doors for me outside of basketball. I was not going to play in the NBA. I'm only 5'11". I don't know if you can tell on Zoom or not. But I knew that for me, this was the pinnacle of my basketball career. I wasn't going to play in Europe or anything afterwards. So then at some point, you also start to think about, okay, well, how do I maximize this moment where basketball has been this unbelievable vehicle that got me this great degree? I need to really, really, take advantage of what's in front of me to help me when life comes kind of after ball. And I certainly tried to do that when I was at Northwestern.
Yeah, and one of the interesting assignments or jobs you had after college was working in the White House. And I don't know if that came through Chicago connections to the Obamas, or like, how did that come about? And I read that one of the things you got to do was to handle the incoming visits by NCAA champions when they come to the White House. That we've all seen those pictures. But how did that come about?
So when I was at Northwestern, I had to do an internship for my degree. I graduated from the School of Education and Social Policy. And the only time I could do it was the summer. So I ended up doing a summer internship in DC at the United States Senate. And I ended up interning for then Senator Obama, who was one of our
Okay.
two senators from the state of Illinois. And I was there for 10 weeks and had this unbelievable experience that summer. The summer of 2006. And you're there on the Hill every day. You're around all these unbelievable minds, and you're working with these people in the Senate office that are truly brilliant. And the staff that's up on the Hill, or in these levels of government, regardless of what side of the aisle they're on, there's just some unbelievably brilliant people there that are trying to tackle some really complex issues when you kind of get behind the screen of politics and you see what governing is about. So it was really eye-opening for me. And so I never anticipated kind of going into that world. But after spending a summer there, I just absolutely really loved it, and had this idea that I went back, played my 5th year at Northwestern, and now I came out right in 07 and was able to join then Senator Obama's campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And so I moved to Iowa, and I spent 7 months in Iowa for the caucuses. After we won, I bounced around to about 4 or 5 other states during the primary, and then came back to Iowa for the general election. And then after the President Obama won, moved to DC to be part of the transition team, and then ultimately in the White House for the Office of Public Engagement, which is where I worked. So when I had gotten that internship, I could have never dreamt it would have led to being in 5 different states and meeting all these, again, unbelievable people in my life. Just like on my team at Northwestern, those relationships have lasted for forever. People were in my wedding. Same thing with that team,
Yeah.
with that experience. It was the same vibe, same sense. Some people in my wedding, some of my closest and dearest friends were from that intense moment of being together. But I was really fortunate when I got to the White House. One of my responsibilities was to handle all the sports outreach for the first family. So whether that was youth sports all the way up to pro sports. And so we got involved in Mrs. Obama's Let's Move initiative to tackle childhood obesity. And how can sports and fitness and physical education be a really prominent, a key pillar to tackling childhood obesity? So that was a great opportunity at 26 years old, 25 years old, to be in this situation of trying to think through that from a governing and program perspective, initiative perspective. And then the championship visits. So you always have seen these going back, decades and decades. Someone wins the championship and they get to come see the president. And so one thing we did, and as we thought about this new opportunity with President Obama, was how do we make it a more impactful moment? Then it's just shaking the president's hand and getting a picture. We're bringing in these unbelievable athletes to DC. So we started to think through, well, let's create a service initiative, a service event around each of these visits. So we had teams either do something on the White House lawn or grounds, or go into DC and do an event. So that was really cool because it allows us to kind of put our stamp on that moment in time where these teams were also doing something to give back to young people in the DC area when they came to meet the president and first lady.
Oh, that's terrific. Well, and all going back to that internship, which I know has been something that traditionally has been hard for student athletes to take advantage of, like their other non-athlete peers. at universities. Typically, summer, there's demands as an athlete that prevents that. I know the late athletic director here, David Williams, was instrumental in starting an internship program that the NCAA approved for student athletes here. It sounds like Northwestern had a really good program for its athletes too. But I mean, it just speaks to the importance of looking out for the whole being of this person, and understanding that this education and the opportunities that come with it are about so much more than just the sport.
No, you're 100% correct. And I think, the other thing that we always talked about at Northwestern too is, and same when I coached, is, hey, the doors are going to be open for you, and then as an athlete, you've got to then step through them and take advantage of those opportunities. But there's certainly, I think it's great when institutions and athletic departments can help to create these opportunities and open these doors for athletes, and then athletes certainly have that responsibility to take advantage of this great chance to really grow your resume, network, grow your experiences, and just learn.
Yeah. And the opportunity that you took advantage of was civic engagement, and so that's what we're here to talk about. Your organization, now called the Team, when it first got started, it was all vote, no play. I know you're one of the co-founders of this movement that is now an official nonprofit organization. But can you talk about the where this idea came from, what initially it was all about, and what your first initiatives were?
Definitely. So yeah, today we are the Team, a nonpartisan nonprofit that is focused on integrating civic engagement into college athletics. And as we're building out new programs and new opportunities to engage athletes and coaches and administrators, we're fortunate to build that off of a foundation that was established the last 2.5 years. And like you said, it started as a movement called All Vote, No Play. And there's two other co-founders who have been instrumental in getting that movement from just a tweet and an idea to really touching thousands of athletes and coaches. And that's Eric Reveneau, who's now the associate head coach at Oregon State for men's basketball, and Lisa K. Solomon, who is a professor at Stanford at the D School. And both Rev and Lisa have just been unbelievable partners in this journey, and they are both in their own way a force of nature, trying to bring about a positive opportunities for young people, and they're both great educators in their own way. And so the movement really was born out of Eric Reveneau, who was then at Georgia Tech, had a meeting with his team and had realized, this was on the heels of George Floyd being murdered, that the team was not registered to vote. We had an election a few months ahead of us here. This was June of 2020, and these passionate young people in the locker room at Georgia Tech wanted to do more than just say something on social media. They wanted to get involved. And Rev kind of reflected and said, I don't think we're doing enough to support them to become more engaged citizens, to get them understanding of these issues. How do you vote? How do you vote by mail? Who are the candidates? What's on your ballot? If I want to do more and get more engaged in the community, how do I do that? So as he was reflecting on all this as a coach, he said, I don't think we've done enough to help these student athletes in that part of their development when they're here on campus. That civic engagement should be a life skill that we develop and foster while they're here, just as we work in developing some of these other life skills for these student athletes. So Rev sent out a tweet, and at the back end of the tweet, he said, hashtag all vote, no play. This idea that we should focus election day about civic engagement, not as much about games and practices. And it kind of grew and became organic and viral and had a life of its own. And in that fall of 2020, we had two programs or two kind of initiatives that we tackled. One, we worked with the NCAA to get a rule on the books, working through D1 SAC. D1 SAC really led it, and we were there to support these student athletes that wanted to get a rule in the books to say that election day, or now 2 weeks prior to election day, should be an off day for every single Division 1, 2, and 3 team in the country, so that they can have an opportunity to engage and learn more about what it means to be an engaged citizen. And so that rule passed in the fall of 2020, which was great. And then the other thing we did is that we set up a process for coaches at the time to pledge to get their student athletes registered to vote, and providing nonpartisan resources to register the student athletes and get them involved in the process. And we had over 1,200 coaches sign that pledge in 2020. So we had some great momentum right from the get-go, and then we connected with Lisa, and she brought in her design experiences and expertise, and we started to think through, how do we keep this momentum going? How do we build things for student athletes? How do we build things for coaches? How do we make it easy and meet them where they're at so that they can understand how to become more involved? And the three of us rolled through different programs and ideas over the course of the last couple of years. And this past fall in 2022, for an example, we ran an event where we had Stephen Curry and Dr. Condoleezza Rice and Coach Vanderbilt from women's Stanford basketball speak to about 2,000 athletes and coaches across the country on a Zoom call to kick off the fall civic season and to think about how to be a great teammate. How do I get involved? Not sit on the sidelines, but be an active and positive community member. And that was a really impactful call. So yeah, we've had these great moments of both resources and events where I think we've been able to make a difference across the country, starting to take this idea of civic engagement and really integrate it into the fabric of college athletics.
That's terrific. Coaches have a lot to do. They're under a lot of pressure, maybe, to win games, to be out recruiting. What have you learned about the best way to get their attention, and to once you have their attention, are they pretty agreeable? Yeah, that yes, this is something that matters and I want to make a priority. Do you have to do a little bit of convincing on that? Do you have to do some education on what civic engagement actually is, either with the coaches or student athletes? But how hard of a sell is this, and how do you get university athletic departments or coaches involved?
Well, I think it's a great question. We've seen passion and enthusiasm from athletes, from coaches and administrators. I think part of our challenge, especially as a new organization in a movement, even though we've worked with thousands of athletes and coaches since 2020, is still getting our name and our resources and our brand out in front of more athletes, coaches, and administrators. So they know that there's a place for these free, nonpartisan resources to engage their teams. I think when we have these conversations, particularly with coaches and administrators, there are some of those questions that you just asked that are going through their minds, because they want to be as prepared as possible when they bring something to their student athletes, right? Any coach or administrator works really hard to make sure, hey, when they stand up in front of their athletes, whether it's a scouting report or it's a life skill, they want to be prepared to really present them with the right stuff. And so we've kept that in mind to really try to pull together a great set of resources, which if you go to our website, which is theteam.org, we have an entire resources tab that's really built for athletes, coaches, and administrators to make this easy, to think through, okay, we've got, I'll give you an example. One of the things we've tried to do over the course of the last 2+ years, Andrew, is collect different pieces of film. We've recorded these great events with Stephen Curry and Dr. Rice. We've done some work with Steve Kerr on a panel. We've had some other athletes kind of talking from the heart about a certain issue. So what we did was we collected all this film, just like a coach would do. We broke it up into different clips, and that's on our website so that you can drop down into our video library and say, okay, I've got 3 minutes and I want to have a conversation as a team. Here's a clip that you could watch of Stephen Curry talking about what it means to be an active community member and his experiences at Davidson, with some follow-up questions. And then that right there might drive a team conversation that could last 20 or 30 minutes. But you could do that on the back end of practice. You could do it on a road trip. You could have that conversation as a group of athletes in your team in the locker room just by watching that short clip. So we've tried to really break this down. When you go to the site, you can search by time. So you got 10 minutes, you got 2 hours. Here are different resources that kind of fit into that bucket, because we're really cognizant that athletes, coaches, administrators are working unbelievably hard. Everybody's there's not enough hours in the day to get everything done, right? So how do we make it efficient and effective for them that when they do turn their attention to becoming a more engaged citizen, there's resources there that speak their language as an athlete, but also make it, I think, easy to hopefully digest and ultimately be a really positive and motivating message.
Okay. And I believe that part of the strategy in involving student athletes is, obviously this is terrific in and of itself for them. And it's something that athletes want to be involved in, but also because of the platforms that they have and the influence they have in their communities. And so is that indeed part of the strategy, that by involving athletes on a college campus, there's an opportunity to reach all the other thousands of students that are there who may be paying attention to what an athlete is saying or doing?
100%, 100%. I think from our experiences, two things jump out to us. One is that to have these conversations create stronger teams. To have these open and honest conversations and letting the athletes feel safe and comfortable about asking these questions. Hey, I'm not too sure, what this means, or where to go find this information, or I really care about this issue and I want to kind of talk about it as part of our team because it affects my life, right? My family's affected by food insecurities, et cetera. And to give these student athletes kind of a safe environment to have that conversation is a really impactful way to build a stronger team, because you're getting to know each other on a deeper level and talking about stuff that doesn't have to do with that sport. And then secondly, I think the athletes that become more engaged, like you said, they've got these unbelievable platforms, and people look to them on the campus, in the community where the school is, and they can share their platform and really have a positive impact in both the campus, the community, or just overall. Some of the followings of these athletes in these schools and these sports across the country are massive. Mm-hmm. And so to think about utilizing that platform for good, thinking about the positive stories that want to be told, the positive messages that want to come across. We're always looking to both work with our athletes to tell those stories, and then to also highlight the great stuff that's happening with the athletes that are involved in some of our different programs and work. And look, we believe strongly that athletes and coaches have this ability to raise up in a positive way a particular issue, or specific volunteer opportunity, or a voter registration drive that is just unique on a campus. There's just not other voices that have that ability and that opportunity to elevate something up, kind of cut through the noise and get people to focus on this specific topic.
Mm-hmm. Just real quick, what's it like operating in college sports in this environment today? I mean, and two issues that seem to come up all the time are transfer portal and NIL. And I think that with transfer portal, I mean, one of the knocks, and I mean, there's pros and cons, I think, but one of the knocks is that, things become so transactional, and but, an effort like yours, I think, roots a student athlete in a community, in a way that maybe is more important than ever. And also with NIL, I know, for example, here, some of our student athletes have NIL deals where they are advocating on behalf of a nonprofit organization in Nashville. And that seems like that feeds right into the idea of civic engagement. So maybe in some ways, this is an ideal time to be doing what you're doing in college sports.
Yeah, it's I coached for 12 years in college, 11 in college basketball and 1 in the NBA, and just left in a year ago to jump into this endeavor full time. There's a lot going on, right? There's a lot of changes that are kind of coming together at the same moment that are going to change college athletics forever. And they're real, and they create, I think, opportunities, challenges at the same time. And it's about thinking about these changes as they're happening. I think, when it comes to the transfer portal, we believe these, like I mentioned earlier, kind of these conversations and the ability to have a sense of community on your team and in your athletic department, and to try to get the athletes to think about the transformational moment that college athletics should be like, and the transformational moments you can have on your team versus the transactional moments is really important. And if there's other ways that coaches and administrators can make that argument, we think this is certainly one of the ways to talk about what it means to be an engaged citizen and an engaged community member. If you have a group of athletes that are thinking more about how to engage the community from the day one they step on campus, they're going to become more embedded in that community, and they're going to be, the stronger connection to the fabric of that school and the community around it. It's going to be a lot harder to leave. Right. If you've got these different connections on campus. But if you're just only in that locker room, just kind of worried about yourself, and you're not thinking about others around you, it's a lot easier to be transactional and say, I should just go to another school and think about, just my own career, right? But if we can get these young people, when they come to campus, to start thinking about the community and thinking beyond that locker room, I think that's a really positive thing for everybody involved. Mm-hmm. And then certainly on the NIL front, there is opportunity for name, image, and likeness, kind of the true essence of when the concept started years ago with the lawsuit with the O'Bannon brothers, is like, it should be a way for these student athletes to do some real positive and some real good in the community. and that still is a way to benefit from their name, image, and likeness. But it is to still have that platform, and that platform, not that every athlete's going to choose to utilize it, can certainly be utilized for bringing good to their campus and their community. So certainly we're always looking at it as an opportunity, and even in some of the work we've done, now that those barriers have come down between athlete and kind of external organizations and groups, we're always thinking creatively around, okay, well, how can we utilize that opportunity now to work directly with a student athlete to raise the brand of, in this case, the team, but just other kind of nonprofits that are doing great work, because there's so many nonprofits across the country that are doing impactful work in these communities, and there's a great opportunity there to build that relationship from athlete to organization.
Can you tell us more about how the team interacts with student athletes? So it sounds like in some respects it could be a coach showing that video, and just engaging in a conversation. You also have a fellowship program where you have student athlete representatives from different colleges that are, more officially working on behalf of the team. Tell us more about how that all works.
Yeah, so our work really falls into, I think, two camps that are easy to think about. Is one is we provide resources and events where we want to have a broad appeal to thousands of athletes and coaches and administrators across the country, where it's easy for them to dial in and for that moment in time flex their civic muscles. There's about 600,000 athletes and coaches across the country in any given year for college sports, and so our goal, our vision is that we want to be interacting with all of them, and that this is really, they think of the team as their resource and their support when it comes to developing civic engagement in their lives. As we've gone through this journey, though, we've realized we've met some unbelievable student athletes, right, that are just true rock stars. So we came away with the idea that as a group, let's develop a program specifically to support those student athletes and give them some real training and some support and some real life experiences to become more engaged leaders, to become civic leaders, become community leaders. So as we think about this unbelievable network that we've developed, let's develop this program to elevate up a few. And we're going to build the most, I think, impactful and premier leadership program for these student athletes across the country. So we've got 28 in our first year of the program. We just launched this past August. They'll do virtual leadership training and networking opportunities via Zoom. We'll do one-on-one mentoring with each of the athletes in the program from the team staff. Each of the 28 athletes will execute a civic project or community service project on their campus. So it's so exciting to be working with these 28 athletes and see what type of impact they want to have in their community. And it kind of runs the gamut of ways that they're thinking about this. And it's really exciting to see them step out as a campus leader and say, this is what I want to do. We want to be there to help mentor them and support them and give them some resources to execute something impactful on their campuses. And then lastly, we want to bring the whole group to DC for 3 days in June after the school year and really have a great kind of end of the program event, bring this group together, have them experience the three branches of government, get them in front of business leaders and sports leaders and civic leaders, and really have an impactful moment for these athletes. So ultimately, they go through our program, they really learn and develop new skills and new experiences to then take with them on whatever it is they want to do after their sport. But they've really been able to strengthen and grow those muscles as a leader, because they already are doing it as an athlete. Some are doing it more quietly than others, but it's inherent in these student athletes that they're great teammates and they have these opportunities to be great leaders. And we're constantly thinking about that at the team of like, how do we develop great teammates? How do we inspire leaders? And then ultimately, how do we empower citizens? But teammates and leaders and citizens is how we're always thinking through our programs and our events. And as we continue to create new programs and events in the future, we'll always kind of keep that framework in mind.
Well, I mean, someone who's been around as a coach, you've been around student athletes your whole life, but what has this experience taught you about this age group, like these young people and their desire to be involved, or the issues that matter to them? I write sports nonfiction for teenagers. I visit a lot of high schools, and I'm always impressed with how civic-minded students are, and they're really paying attention to so many fundamentally important issues in the world, and oftentimes they're they're overlooked as just kids, but I mean, they're smart and they're active, they're hardworking, they're involved. I imagine that's the same experience you're having with your student athlete ambassadors. But what have you learned about them and the issues that are important that really matter to them these days?
I think the athletes that we work with, one, they all want their voice, their vote to matter. They really they want to make inherently they really want to try to make a difference. They want to move the needle, and I think one thing that's so encouraging when you're working with these athletes, which is different than even when I was an athlete a few years back, is that I think they can start to see and think about and imagine things to be different. They can design a new future almost in their mind. They can think through that in a way that is a little different than I think a few years back. And that's where we feel like, hey, if we can help give them some of the experiences and resources and tools, now they can go out and if you want to create a new future, first you got to kind of think through it and design it in your mind a little bit, and then go out and work hard to execute it. So as we're seeing these athletes work on these projects where, hey, I want to really make a difference at this local community where we want to provide them meals to young people. Well, now that's seeing a new future where this area of this city doesn't have to maybe deal with food insecurity. So then how can I go out now and design a project and create a budget and execute it and work really hard to make a difference and move a needle with that community? I think the fact that these athletes are thinking about that and that they can see a new future, and then we just want to be there to help support them on this journey and train their muscles to do that and make a difference. Because if they're getting that life skill now at 20 or 21, imagine what they can do in 20 years when they're running a company, or they are the head of a nonprofit, or they are running for office. I think they'll be able to see and design things in a new way, which will be really impactful. And I think you see this, I'm sure as well too, Andrew, with student athletes on campus, is that they're also inherently competitive, right? Like they really want to do well. They're driven to again make that difference that I think really can sometimes separate athletes in a positive way. And the last thing I would say is I think just with the nature of the world we live in today, they've absorbed a lot more information than like I did when I was on campus. And I was somebody who developed a real interest in politics and government and civics. But yet that required me working hard to go read the op-eds that day in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, right? I had to go find the newspaper on campus, figure out how to do that when I'm in the cold tub after practice. Now they can just pick up their phones and in a minute, in a second, I should say, be in front of a tremendous amount of information. So I think they are much more high school into college, thinking about things and worldly in a way that just wasn't there a few years back without the technology to connect them with news and information immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so if a coach is watching this and they want to get involved, or student athlete is watching this, they want to get involved, what do they do? Where do they find you? And is it something like you have to join? Can you just take advantage of the resources, or how does that work?
Yeah, please visit our website, theteam.org. We have got free resources on there that you can just go to the resources page, and we've got our free documents. We've got the video library. We've got other civic drills that we've organized that anybody can take advantage of. So if there's a coach or athlete that's listening, or administrator, please go visit it, take advantage of it. You can also reach out to us through the website, which we have people do that all the time. And we can have conversations directly about your team or about your athletics department to try to be a resource. We're constantly connecting with conferences, individual schools, companies, you name it. People are I think really excited about leaning into this space more and wanting to support athletes and coaches that go through this journey. So please come to the website, reach out to us. We're here to be helpful. We really want to try to assist as many athletes and coaches and administrators that are kind of on this journey. And the other great thing about what we've tried to do over the course of the last 2+ years, and Lisa's been a great advocate in this space, is we want to elevate up positive stories. Right? We certainly enough out there that's negative about the world, that's negative about college athletics, but there's so much of really positive things that are happening on these campuses. So we're constantly able to try to, in a very organic way, get get some of these stories told in the press and across the country about the really good work that's happening on these campuses. So we're here to be a resource. I would really hope that anyone who's listening that's interested, please reach out to us. Again, visit theteam.org to take advantage of our resources and connect with us. We'd love to be here to help you.
All right. Well, Joe, this is great. Congratulations on all you've accomplished so far. I know there's so much more ahead. I know when you have your ambassadors up there in DC, that's going to be just an amazing opportunity for them. And I know we have some Vanderbilt students and student athletes who are involved with the team who will have a great experience there. So thank you again for all you're doing. It's so important these days, and what a great organization. Really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you so much, Andrew. It's great to be here and have this opportunity today. And congratulations on all your successes with your books and everything that you've got going on in your world. You do a ton there on campus, but also across the country in the sports space. So thank you for everything you do.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, hopefully I'll see you up in Boston soon, and please give my best to Lisa as well.
Sounds great. Thanks, Andrew.
Take care.